I do have this recurring dream of me running through a forest.
Jaime Torres, Pasco, Washington, Tri-Cities Justice Alliance.
I can hear my feet pounding on the floor, my heart pumping in my chest, and I stopped knowing what that sensation felt like. When I suffered my brain bleed that left me disabled, it changed the way I viewed everything. And, it made me realize that there's so much more adversity.
Screen shows Front and Centered, Disability Rights Washington, Frontline Solutions for Clean and Just Transportation.
Literally one side of the city can be more accessible than the other side of the city.
Krystal Monteros, Tacoma, Washington, Commission on Disabilities.
I've had certain situations where, there was one, all I wanted to do was go to Kmart. I got off the bus and there was concrete at the bus stop. Now, as soon as I turned, it turned straight to loose gravel for the sidewalk that my front wheels just totally dug into. Now, I was across the street from Kmart and I couldn't get to the crosswalk to cross the street to get to Kmart.
When I tried to transfer from the sidewalk to the road to cross the street.
Jamin Mason, Port Orchard, Washington, Washington People's Party.
The ramp had eroded about a 3-inch gap between the sidewalk and the road. My scooter is not an off-road vehicle, so I was stuck waving my arm in traffic for someone to help. Very embarrassing. Finally, a helpful citizen and his son lifted me to safety. If it wasn't for them, who knows how long I would have been stuck.
This is a very busy street, even though it doesn't appear here.
Paul Tabayoyon, Yakima, Washington, Asian Pacific Islander Coalition of Yakima.
I've had people swerve at me, honk at me, even with my cane. But this is a perfect example in Yakima where we have so many areas that don't have access to the bus stop. If there's snow, we get a lot of snow in Yakima sometimes. You don't even have a place to stand for the bus stop.
I'm totally blind.
Abby Griffith, Vancouver, Washington, Disability Mobility Initiative.
I am transit dependent. I live in low-income housing. From here where I live, it takes me over 2 hours to get to my school.
Alejandra Grillo-Roa, Seattle, Washington, Entre, Hermanos.
So we would love to see more, better schedules.
I have some buses here run once an hour. When I miss my bus, I sit at bus stop entire hour waiting for bus in the rain, in the snow, in the sun. Give us, please, closest bus stop, especially low-income housings.
People are just trying to get a job in whatever they can. But again, due to lack of transportation or access to public transportation, sometimes they're not able to do that.
Our transportation system.
Paulo Nunes-Ueno, Seattle, Washington, Front and Centered.
Acts as if only certain people deserve dignity when they move around the state. The people that deserve dignity are the people that are able to drive, can afford to drive, are old enough to drive. This is the Front and Centered blog post that then mentions the listening sessions that we did with many of your groups.
Screen shows Front and Centered blog post, Victory Lap. Let's build the clean and just transportation we need.
And we call it a victory lap because what we want to say there is, hey, we've built all the roads that we will need for decades into the future. Let's call that project done. Victory, mission accomplished. But as all of your stories tell us, we don't have even the basics.
Frankly, people who can't and don't drive make up a quarter of our state's population, at least, right?
Anna Zivarts, Seattle, Washington, Disability Mobility Initiative.
Even if we weren't such a large group of folks, we still have valid access needs, and those access needs should be met. And we can meet them. We're also an incredibly wealthy state. There is the resources here to make the investments we need. They're just not getting prioritized in the way that our communities are asking for.
Through a coalition of other advocates called Clean and Just Transportation Coalitions, we've been working to identify, well, what are the needs? When Abby talks about waiting at the bus stop for an hour, that is totally unacceptable, right? Bus frequency is freedom. And if the bus runs every 10 minutes, if you miss one, it's not a big deal. Abby can wait for 10 minutes.
Screen shows bar graph titled Identified Shortfall Hobbs and Phi.
And so the green bars here are the transit service needs that we see in Washington State, $15 billion. Both of these packages that we looked at today, they either offer a tiny little bit or a little bit over 16 years.
I'm kind of a straight shooter. So from this situation, how soon could the disabled community see this come to fruition for something that we need so bad?
Screen shows Front and Centered, Disability Mobility Initiative, Disability Rights Washington, frontandcentered.org.